Hello, dear one. Welcome to the Remember Your Nature podcast. I am Faith Hannah Corbin, and today I have no plan. I am going to deeply remain rooted in the sensations of my body, to remain intimately connected with the feeling of breath coming in and out of my nostrils, and remaining so here and so present, and allowing what needs to come through me to come. And this is regarding power, non-duality, attachment, and the fear of death. I am looking at a Buddhist, I forget the name of it, but it's this traditional art that monks create, and it's this beautiful red and black material, and in the middle is a square, and within the square is a circle, and within the middle of the circle is the Om symbol, and around it in Sanskrit is Om Mani Padme Om, which is a very ancient chant of the Buddhists, which I interpret as I am the jewel of the lotus. I'm also sitting in front of my altar, which right now represents the sacred feminine and divine masculine energies together. And in the middle is one of those ancient, it's a candle I got from an organic store, but it's one of those ancient statues of like the fertile goddesses that have like the big breasts and big belly and accentuated yoni. And it's this like beeswax candle that I often look at, and it's just very powerful. Probably like Sumerian inspired goddess candle. So this is where I'm at in this present moment. And I have just returning from a meditation retreat. And this was a 10-day silent retreat under the Theravada Buddhist tradition, practicing Vipassana meditation. And I have practiced Vipassana before at the same meditation retreat. But what I experienced here this time was absolutely has changed me and my perception of the world and the way that I live and breathe in the world fundamentally. And nothing big happened. There wasn't this road to Damascus moment where I was struck down and heard the voice of God and I had completely changed. But it was more a quiet awakening and revolution of thousands of times going beyond myself and coming back to the breath and witnessing the truth of things, the true stability of things, which is instability and impermanence. I've went into the retreat with this prior background knowledge of non-duality and spirituality and experiencing spaciousness that goes way beyond my comprehension. But before the retreat, I've been very much in my ego, and not in a bad way, but in a way of finding out who I am in the world, and without shame, allowing myself to just go through my cycles and to witness all of my patterns and to know that I need to just become them to be able to shift them. So I am, in years past, I've had a very stable spiritual practice every day. Meditation has been a cornerstone for me in my life, but most recently I haven't been meditating. I've just been resting, and I haven't been practicing yoga, and I haven't been deeply engaged in the spiritual texts, and I've just been experiencing life on this earth, experiencing my humanness. So I also have a very positive relationship with myself and with who I am in the world. And I'm really proud of myself and I really love who I am in the world. But the meditation retreat just allowed me to continue to let go of the attachment of who I think that I am. So, the practice of the meditation is that for 5 days, we practice one meditation called Anapana, which is bringing the awareness to one point underneath the nose, so like on the nostril, above the upper lip. And we bring our attention to that one point of the breath just going in and out. So we just become aware of the in and the out breath and that one point of breath touching the skin. And we do this intentionally to develop something called samadhi, which is one pointed concentration of mind. And also, we are gaining a lot of information around Buddhist teachings and around the Dhamma, which is the spiritual text of the Buddha. And my first meditation retreat, I had a lot of resistance towards listening to the teachings because my mind was very active and was questioning everything and was trying to figure out what they're saying. Is it real or is it not? Reincarnation and the whole point and aspect of doing this meditation. But this time, I really heard what the meditation teacher said was that don't accept anything on blind faith. Don't just believe what we say. Allow the practice to speak. Allow yourself to experience the meditation and to experience and to come to your own conclusions. So I became less concerned of whether there are 31 planes of existence and if reincarnation is real and what's going to happen. And I became more concerned and more allowing of just surrendering into the practice of meditation and allowing myself to just have an experience and to see what changes when I just surrender to the experience and to really give it my all and to just try without resistance. And it gets pretty deep and pretty out there because we live in such a mind culture. We are all very identified with our minds and with thought form. And so it's really something foreign and alien to have the experience of understanding that what I have built my foundation on, which is my identity based on thought, that I am actually not that, and that the ultimate reality I am experiencing is actually not that, because I think that that's real and that's stable. However, it's something that quiets and that I can go beyond within my meditation experience. And something that I was really attached to as I was practicing Anapana first. So my experience of practicing Anapana was having a lot of thoughts and a lot of thinking, especially ideas about myself that are beautiful and positive, and really witnessing desires, what I want in my life and what I want to happen, and feeling so much love and excitement and really feeling good about myself and who I am. But the practice is completely letting go of all thought form, and by means of effort and zestful ease and determination to come back to the breath, come back to the breath over and over and over again. So eventually the mind starts to become really quiet. And we're also practicing sila, or morality. So we are in our lives orienting ourselves in a moral way. So taking the different precepts that Buddhism posits, such as no lying, no stealing, no sexual misconduct, no killing, and having no distractions. So when you're just meditating and resting all day and living in alignment with morality, your mind starts to become really quiet. And as my mind started to get really quiet, I started to see the attachment that I had to my identity and to who I think that I am in the world. With that, like, who I think I am, there's no energy of like wrong or right here. Like, who do you think you are? But more like who I am attached to and what I think is real and true. And I'm having a little bit of a difficulty explaining and articulating the experience of this. So I would have these thoughts, thoughts of love of myself and of my life and excitement about the future. And I would just witness them and then notice that in the beginning, when my mind was more active, I would feel this feeling of love and power, and then I would continue to have thought form from that place, from that energy, and from that emotion. But the meditation allowed me to continue to come back to the breath and to come back to that awareness. So I realized that all of that space that was being taken up in my mind. How do you explain the experience of ego dissolution and identity death and the loss of grip on the attachments that I have held on to for so long, that I believe I needed to be able to feel okay and to feel some sense of stability in the world? And how do you explain that there is a peace that surpasses anything you could ever gain when you realize that life is just sand falling through our fingertips? Because my experience of Anapana, without getting so much in the weeds, was that I was attached to this identity that I held. And I took so much action, I realized, from my life, out of this need to prove myself. And what feels most important here is that underneath that need to prove myself was survival instinct and fear of death. And during those first few days, as my mind quieted and I continued to go beyond what I thought, go beyond my thinking and come back to pure awareness and sensation, I was faced with feeling the sensation of the understanding that I am going to cease and I'm going to die. And that fear of death has informed, and that fear of not being okay and the attachment to life and to identity of who I think that I am, that has informed so much of my action and so much of my behavior. And something fundamentally shifted within myself as I watched that fear dissolve. And I'm not saying that I don't value my life, nor if I was in a near-death situation that I wouldn't feel afraid. But I faced a really subtle, powerful, energetic block, impurity within my heart that has made me grip onto identity and made me want and desire from a place of not wanting to die. For example, the reason why I felt this was because I was considering a relationship that I had with an individual. And I felt very confused and unclear about how I actually felt about him. And I realized that I was going through this cycle of thinking about him and having ill will towards him. And I would feel a great attachment, and then something would happen. He would say something that I didn't agree with, or something would happen and I would be triggered and I would feel ill will towards him. But when those situations happened where he would say something that I didn't agree with, then instead of just sharing how I felt and being honest and authentic without needing him to change, that feeling of grief and feeling unsettled went directly to my head. And I would then think of him as the enemy and have ill will towards him, and then abandon myself. And when I abandoned myself, then I felt resentment. And deep down, it's towards myself because I'm abandoning myself and my own power. And I realized that during my meditation, when I was holding him in my awareness, that experience of me abandoning myself and then thinking of him as wrong and having ill will towards him is because I have an emotional attachment to him, and I want to prove myself to him because I want to prove myself because I want to survive. And I feel that the need for validation from other people in general is deeply rooted in this experience of wanting to survive. Because of course, if you think relationally, we need each other. And if we don't have one another, if we aren't accepted by the other, same thing with tribe. If we are not accepted by our community or by our tribe, way back, if we weren't accepted, we would die. And so it makes sense that we would have this survival instinct and this need to be accepted and to prove ourselves and to be validated by other people. And this was really profound for me. Because I just I was given the opportunity to go really deep and understand the need for me to be accepted and to be validated and to feel powerful. Because when we're accepted and we're validated, we feel powerful. We feel that because when other people like us, when other people accept us, we feel that we have power. And another really interesting insight that I had by reflection of one of my elders. So I, have a regular conversation and relationship with one of my elders who is one of the wisest people that I know. And I would tell her about my relational issues, about the difficulties I'm having with my mom and my dad, or when other people I feel like are wronging me. And she's always reflected that if I'm speaking about it, or if I'm making one person right or one person wrong, or trying to explain myself so much, then that just means that there's still some insecurity that I have, and I'm still giving my power away. Because power is something, it's just space that we hold. And I realized that this need to explain myself and this need to make myself right and another person wrong. Like one time I said, yeah, I just feel like I need to do this to protect myself. And she said, what is there to protect? Now, of course, on like the 3D level, there is definitely a need to distance ourselves from people that have ill intentions, and there is this sense of like actual need for self-preservation and self-protection. But when we're talking spiritually, there is an experience of having no self. And I'm gaining this continued embodied understanding and experience that, like, intellectually you can understand that there is a power that can never be taken away from us, but there is a power that can never be taken away from us, and that's a power that we are. And I realized that when I was dissolving that grappling of fear of death and need to survive, that I was spending so much energy in taking action, wanting to unconsciously be validated and to be accepted and to be liked, to have this desire for fame or a desire for power, because I wanted to feel powerful. I wanted to prove my power, but I realized that if I'm trying to prove my power unconsciously by gaining like success and merits in the world, by having people look at me and think that I'm beautiful or impressive, trying to explain myself or trying to flex my intelligence or my knowledge, then that still means that I'm insecure and I don't actually feel as powerful. And I also feel that, like, if we're looking into the world, that most people are orienting themselves from this place of deep fear of survival and of death. And so much suffering is happening in the world because of this deep, deep desire to preserve one's life and egoic identity. And so this feels really important to understand that there is a difference between feeling powerful and being powerful. And to feel powerful, one can gain everything in the world. They can gain all of the fame, all of the money, all of the material success, which isn't a bad thing, not to demonize material success, but it can become harmful when it's rooted in this place of lack of security, lack of existential security. And I realized that when I was doing that Anapana meditation, when I was going beyond all of my thoughts, because I would have a thought and then I would start to feel really good about myself, and then I would go down the spiral of feeling really good and then feeling all of these desires in my life and thinking about who I am and how other people, yeah, just thinking about who I am, and then but then that would stop because I would get better at coming back to the breath and my concentration would increase. And I realized a deep attachment to feeling powerful and to being an impressive person, and not to be an oppressive person, but to have other people view me as that. And it's completely all on a very unconscious level. Like, we're just working through the stuff of the 95% that isn't the conscious mind. And the powerful understanding was that it's not that I have to prove my power. Power is something that I just have, and it's quiet. And it just means that I can hold my space, and that I don't abandon myself, and that I don't blame anyone for my own space and for my own life. And think about someone, Donald Trump, Jeff Bezos, whomever, and that have everything in the world, that have all of the power, that are making so much, like in the physical world, making so many decisions, are getting away with murder and child molestation and trigger warning, the rape and pillage of the earth, and can literally do whatever it is that they desire and have no consequences to it, it seems. Think about them who have all of the worldly power, who have a certain kind of power that we're all unconsciously kind of yearning for and taking action towards, because we don't want to die, because we want to survive, because we want to be okay. Think about Viktor Frankl in his book, Man's Search for Meaning. Viktor Frankl was a psychologist, I believe, and he was Jewish. I'm pretty sure he was Jewish, but he was in a concentration camp. And the whole crux of Viktor Frankl's book and his work is that his job at the concentration camps was to dig the holes for the bodies to go into. And he felt a sense of meaning and fulfillment and purpose doing that. He knew that he changed his perspective and his perception so much that he felt at peace with that job that he had to do, and he learned so much. He gained so much insight and wisdom from that deeply intense and heart-wrenching experience by understanding that real power is your choice to respond. Is that there is a space between stimulus and response, and that is where we live. That is where real power lies. And then what is that space? That space is the awareness of one breath in and one breath out. Complete, total concentration of one spot underneath the nostril. That space that permeates everything, that's beyond thought, and that's beyond thought form. And I realized that is real power, and that I don't have to prove my power anymore, that I don't have to show people how smart I am. I don't have to show people how beautiful I am. And not saying that my intelligence and my beauty are not worthy of being seen and admired and respected. But now I realize that when I don't need to prove myself, I don't need anything from anyone. I'm not wanting anything from anyone. And I actually save and conserve so much of my energy, and I allow it to continue to be funneled towards what action I feel really needs to be taken through me. And so the last 5 days is then Vipassana meditation, which is using the body as an object for meditation to understand something called anicca, which is impermanence and change. And it's this really powerful experience of witnessing the sensations of the body and witnessing just the rise and fall of sensations, and that everything we're witnessing is just a sensation that we perceive as to be real or to not be real. But the truth is that everything is just a rising and falling atom in constant change and flux. And what I experienced is that nothing is stable and nothing is permanent. And so therefore, it's a really powerful experience to unconsciously start to rewire the mind and the perception to the fact that there is nothing to hold on to, that there is nothing to grip onto, that there is no true identity to hold on to, and that everything is just a changing sensation. And therefore, having any attachments to how things are, how things should be, or how we think that we want them to be, is ultimately going to cause us suffering, because they're ultimately going to change if we attach ourselves to anything. And I think this is a really powerful perspective and awareness to have, because it takes away this grip that we have to have things be a certain way. And I think that it takes a lot of greed out of our hearts. And I believe as a culture and as a country, we all naturally have a lot of greed for desire and want. And not saying that desire is a bad thing, but we start to have these fixed ideas about what we want and what success looks like. And it just seems that from this paradigm, everyone's clawing at one another to gain some sort of safety and security in this world. And it seems that the best, most safe thing when we're operating from this fear of death, from this fear of annihilation, and from this ontological fear of the void, that the most strategic and smart thing is to not care about the livelihoods of other people and to basically claw our way up the ladder so that we can gain a sense of power that no one can touch. Now, this is the power that I was speaking about before, the feeling powerful. It's the illusory power of being able to have so much money and so much wealth and so much influence that you can get away with murder and child molestation and the rape and pillage of the earth and have nothing happen to you. But I believe that the awakening of our knowing that everything is impermanent and everything is unstable, and if we could just find peace and contentment with what we have now, that would help us all come back on more of an equal playing field, and we could be able to have a sense of equanimity and connection with one another and goodwill with one another. Because if life is just sand slipping through our fingertips, why wouldn't we want to take good action that's going to produce fruitful, wholesome results, so that we'll have more peace of mind, so that we're not going to use all of our energy to just try to preserve some sense of identity that's not even real. And so after the meditation retreat, I feel a fundamental change within myself. And I feel so much more space. I feel so much less attached to needing for things to be a certain way, or needing for other people to see me and to approve of me. And I feel just like a lot more peace and a lot more generous and a lot more accepting of the nature of things, is that this is just the only moment that we have, and it's going to rise and it's going to fall, and some things are going to be easier than others. And I have desires and I have skills and talents, but I just feel completely surrendered of how they're going to continue to be utilized in my life. And I do still feel attachments, but now I can clock them so much more and so much more with so much more clarity. And I don't allow them to take me over and to take my power away. Because like Viktor Frankl shared and embodied in his own life, I realized that I have the power to choose peace and acceptance, to choose spaciousness, to choose compassion, to choose to understand the human condition and understand other people's behavior, and to have space around it all, and to do the work within myself to find peace and clarity with what I have and with where I'm at and with how my path is looking, and not want anyone or not want anything from anyone, nor want anyone to save me, but recognizing that I am responsible for my own redemption and salvation. And I'm just going to continue to trust in the practice of life, in the practice of purification, and to be open and to allow my quiet power to continue to reveal itself to me, and to completely be at peace with how life is unfolding, and to not be attached, but to use my life force energy strategically in alignment with where my nervous system is calling for me to move and to take action and to rest and to be nourished, so that my life is just a series of moments and sensations, and that my egoic identity is a function for me to be able to live well, to take wholesome action, and to utilize my life force energy to relieve suffering and to bring more peace and more balance on the earth. And I feel really at peace with that. That feels really clear. And that feels like the best thing I can do in response to so much suffering in the world. Face my ontological fear of the void, and to accept the mystery that is this experience. Have desires, but not hold on to them so tightly. And to be grateful and to be joyful and to grieve when necessary. So yeah, that was a really powerful experience that I had. And I pray that you are gaining some nourishment and rest and clarity during this time of deep intensity, and that you remember the preciousness it is to be with your loved ones, and you remember the impermanence of life, which makes life so much sweeter and allows us, I believe, to appreciate it with so much more depth, and to appreciate beauty, to drink in the nectar of beauty, and just to allow life to be what it is right now. One moment at a time, one foot in front of the other. Sending you much love.